Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. Be yourself, see yourself. This is a show by people. Belize our hopes for to needless reason. Nobody feel left out. Is the vibe we dealing. Let's find a solution. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love, respect, unselfishness and cooperation. That's how we need to build a strong nation. We are the people to make the changes. We are the changes. WB. And all the things that will happen like I got blue skies. I love it make people get victimized. Let's work together for better. We got to unite. Belize, yeah. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. WB. Get up, make every day count. Don't waste it, people. Do your part, play a role, get where you need to. You can tune in for work or in your vehicle. If you got a problem, pick up the phone. Why wait? It's a time calling. It's a show with no matter even if you're at home. Just call in. WB. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. WB. Be yourself, see yourself. This is a show my people. Belize our hopes so to needless reason. Nobody feel left out. Is the vibe we dealing. Let's find a solution. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love, respect, unselfishness and cooperation. That's how we need to build a strong nation. We are the people to make the changes. We are the changes. WB. And all the things that will happen under God blue skies. I love it that people get victimized. Let's work together for better. We got to unite. Belize, yeah. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. WB.
right, welcome. This is WUB, Wake Up Belize, Morning Vibes. It's a Thursday morning, the 8th day of May, 2025. And we welcome you to the program this morning. I'm Nuri Mohammed. We've got a power pack show for you, so let's get right into it. This morning, we'll hear from the Met Office. Miss Catherine Kamabach will bring us up to date. And then we'll give you the news from the news package from the news center, and then we'll get into the conversation a little bit after 7 o'clock this morning. Ms. Kamabach?
Good morning, Belize. Warm and dry conditions continue to dominate all weather. The 24-hour forecast for Belize and her coastal waters calls for mostly sunny skies today, and high temperatures are expected to reach 89 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 96 inland, and 84 over the mountains. Tonight, the skies will be clear to partly cloudy with low temperatures of 82 along the coast, 75 over inland areas, and 68 in the higher elevations. Little to no rain is expected. The winds will blow from the east at 10 to 20 knots, and the sea state will be choppy to moderate. A high tide will occur at 7:23 this morning, followed by a low at 2:04 in the afternoon. Another high will occur at 8:06 tonight and a low at 1:51 a.m. The sun rose at 5:23 this morning and will set at 6:15. The moon comes up at 3:14 this afternoon and set at 3:19 tomorrow morning. The outlook for Friday and Friday night is for fair and hot conditions, and shower activity, if any, will be isolated. In the sargassum forecast, satellite imagery and surface observations continue to show large quantities of sargassum over our area, and this is expected to continue for the next several days. And in the fire forecast, the risk for forest and brush fires will continue to be moderate to high over the next 24 hours. And that's your morning forecast that was prepared here at the National Meteorological Service.
The first private radio in Belize since 1989. Creme FM presents the news. Informative, accurate, current information, local, regional, and international news, weather and sports. And now, the news. The first private radio in Belize since 1989. Creme FM presents news. Informative, accurate, current information, local, regional, and international news, weather and sports. And now, the news.
Justice Tawanda Hondura on Wednesday ruled that the October 20th, 2024 National Convention held by Honorable Tracy Panton was not a valid one, as it did not meet the party's constitutional requirements. He stated that for any party convention to be valid, they must, quote, be held in compliance with the contractual agreed terms and processes set out by the UDP's constitution, end of quote. However, Justice Hondura also ruled that Panton was improperly expelled by Moses Shine Barrow and that she continues to be a legitimate member of the UDP. Following the ruling, Barrow took to Facebook and posted, quote, October 20th was invalid. Justice, end of quote. Meanwhile, on her Facebook page, Panton posted, quote, though the court ruled that the convention did not comply strictly with the letter of the party's constitution, the judgment did not erase the critical context. It was the outright obstruction and constitutional defiance of Barrow and Perifete that forced reform-minded members to act. The UDP respects the authority of the court, but it also asserts that the democratic principle on which the party was founded was eroded by the leadership that ignored petitions, suppressed internal dissent, and weaponized party organs against its members. End of quote. On Tuesday, the Chief Education Officer, Yolanda Gongora, sent a memorandum declaring that schools are to remain open on Friday. The memo also reminded principals that they do not have the authority to issue notices to parents that classes are canceled. On Wednesday, BNTU President Nadia Callis addressed her members in a live broadcast on Facebook. Callis said that the ministry's move was expected and within their right. She urged members to be prepared to make sacrifices, but to stand firm with the decisions that they have made.
I want you to know that the ministry is within its constitutional right. That memo speaks to keeping schools open. Nothing is wrong with that. That comes out every single time we decide to demonstrate, or if we're going on strike, whatever it is. That's their right. Now, the other part to that memo is this, which you all understand. The indirect aspect of it is to reduce the BNTU's number on Friday. That is up to you. That is up to you, the membership. And I put that in your court. I put the ball in your court. The ministry will send that out because they have a responsibility for education. And the management will work with them, and you have seen letters coming out of the management telling you that schools will reopen, asking administrators to get the list of names of those who are going, all of that. It's important for them to know that if you're going, give them your name. Now, your responsibility as a member of this beloved union is to notify your parents that you will not be there. Notify your students that you will not be there. But you do not have the legal authority to tell them not to come to school and that there will be no classes. So please bear that in mind, my dear members. On the other hand, I have to say this. Management, I love the fact that we have the memos coming out. And that is the same concerted effort I want to see from you and the ministry as it pertains to our teachers getting their income tax. A lot of you have not reconciled. So my teachers are suffering for years. Now, if you can work together on this, you can work together on everything. That's the same effort I want to see concerning my teachers who are waiting on their increments. If you can work together on this, you can work together on that. Maybe, I'm not certain, but I'm just putting it out there from now. Maybe under the table, they will tell the management not to pay you for the day. Maybe. Who will tell the management? I don't know. Maybe. I have to put a maybe out there. Be prepared for whatever it is, but you've got to be prepared to take the stand that you voted for.
Personnel from the Michigan State University, MSU, are in northern Belize to do a drone survey with the use of LIDAR, that is light detection and ranging technology. The purpose of the survey is to map what ancient Sartaneja would have looked like. This would essentially indicate where below ground ancient structures could be located. Dr. Gabrielle Warbel, a professor of archaeology at MSU, spoke more about the survey that's currently underway.
So my colleague and I, Dr. Brian Haley, are here to do a drone survey. And so what we're not digging, we're not investigating further. What we're trying to do is create a map of all of the ancient structures and all of the ancient features that are in this area to try to understand where people lived and how they lived in the past. We are still in the process. We just got started on Monday. And so what we're doing is we're flying a drone that is equipped with LIDAR. So it's equipped with a laser on the bottom that shoots a signal as it flies. And it basically captures 3D points on the ground. This is in the trees, on the ground surface. And what we can do once we get that data back and we process it is we can remove all of the points from the trees. So it essentially allows us to see through the trees, and it allows us to see the ground surface. And so that allows us then to see where there are changes in the ground that correspond to ancient buildings.
Dr. Warbel has been conducting archaeological research in Belize for over 30 years. He explains what makes Sartaneja Corozal perfect for this survey.
I have worked all over Belize, and one of the interesting things that I've come to really find fascinating is the role that communities that lived on the coast had. And so people who lived on the coast were traders, they were fishermen, they they made salt, they did things like harvested conch shell to make jewelry. So it has a really important role to all of the sites, even the ones inland. So I'm really interested in studying these coastal communities and to think about how they were essential for the larger Maya world and how they kept things running. And so Sartanea has a great opportunity to do this. There's a fairly large site core, so this community in the past would have been fairly big, maybe a few thousand people, similar to what it is today. It's also an interesting location because of it occurs sort of right at the entrance to the larger Chetumal or to the Chetumal Bay or Corozal Bay. So it's central, I would say. And so I think it's really interesting. There's also a lot of wells here. And so there's access, despite the fact that you're in the swampy area that's surrounded by mangroves, you still have access to really fresh water. And that's why people live here today. And everybody who's been showing us around has pointed out all of the wells, the ancient wells. And you can still see the stones that are lined that the Maya would have.
While the purpose at this stage is not excavation, Dr. Bell explained how the data can be used as the community continues to develop.
We're not sure whether we'll wind up doing excavations or not, but I think it's a really great opportunity to figure out the extent of ancient settlement, and especially in this area, because as you may know, they just opened a big road to this town. And so all of there's a lot of land that's opening up, and people are going to start clearing it. People may start moving dirt around in order to build houses, and so for us, this is a window where we can actually map what is here. And so even if it gets moved, we'll at least know where all of the structures were. We're using it with this really great technology too, this LiDAR. And we thought we might give you a demonstration if you'd like to see it.
Yes, please.
All right. So I don't know if you can see the orange drone in the background. This is a fixed wing drone. So instead of having the helicopter, the quadcopters they call it, this one actually has two rotors, and it's going to shoot up into the sky, and then it flies around like an airplane. So you can see up in the sky.
Dr. Warbell thanks all those who have assisted thus far in the project, including the Sartaneja Village Council and its chairman, Sartaneja Alliance for Conservation and Development, the Institute of Archaeology, and the Department of Civilization, as well as the people of Sartaneja. According to personnel from the Institute of Archaeology, they are eagerly awaiting to see the results, as the last mapping of that area was done decades ago. Of interest is the state of the structures, as it is believed that many have been deteriorated and have been damaged due to development in the area. There is a possibility that, depending on the data gathered, the structures could even be excavated. If you travel frequently by bus, you can understand the frustration of many who utilize the various bus terminals across the country. It's even worse when the municipality does not even have an official bus terminal, like San Ignacio and Orange Walk. Well, at least for Orange Walk, the situation looks promising. According to the mayor of Sugar City, Ludwig Shepherd, there are plans for that municipality to get a super bus terminal. Mayor Shepherd says the hopes are that the project will commence soon.
Yes, as we speak right now, we were in talks with a private contractor to turn where the bus terminal is into a super terminal. We'll be moving MIDH from there. MIDH, we have already located the land for MIDH. They will be moving from there. It's just we just want to make sure that the private contractor find means and ways how to get back his money. He's going to be investing about not off the bat about $20 million for a super bus terminal in Range Rock, and this talk has been on the table going for a year and a half now, going for two, and we brought it up back just a couple months ago.
News package for this morning, the 8th day of May 2025. There's more news coming up after this program. That is the morning stew. There's an update at 12 and also one at 3. And at 5:15, there is a full news broadcast, all this on CREM Radio. Here on XTV, we bring you the entire news package at 6 o'clock this evening. It's now 10 minutes to 7 o'clock. We take a short break, come back. We'll open the phone lines until our guest comes in a little bit after 7 o'clock.
The first private radio in Belize since 1989. The news. Informative, accurate, current information.
All right, welcome back. This is WUB, Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes. It's a Thursday morning, the 8th day of May 2025. And we have three powerful guests. As a matter of fact, the entire show today is full up of very important conversations. We'll start off with part of our guests for the first part. We will be talking to the unions. As you know, when the unions begin to roar, the government sits up and takes notice, particularly these three unions, which comprise the majority of the public officers' workforce in the country. They are the BNTU, the Public Services Union, and the Association of Public Officers, Public Servants, Senior Managers. So they've held on to servants, which is interesting. But we have their president here, Ms. Sharon Fraser, and the other two are rushing from Belmopan, and they should be here in just a few minutes. So let's start with you. Welcome first, Ms. Fraser.
Morning, Belize.
Good to see you. Good to see
Thank you.
And it seems as though whenever there's a revolutionary struggle, somehow you seem to make it in one of the original warriors, which is extremely good. But what will take place tomorrow seem to have come suddenly, even though we know that the unions, particularly BNTU, have been in negotiations with government. This seems almost an overnight decision on the part of the three most powerful unions to stage, and it's not a strike, but to stage a demonstration tomorrow. Can you talk about why, and is it sudden, or has it been building over a time? What is to take place tomorrow?
Okay, so it's not sudden.
Okay.
It might seem that way, but it definitely is not. The joint unions have been engaged in negotiating with government from the time that we've signed the last collective bargaining agreement, which was somewhere in July. Maybe you might not know, or the general public, is that it took us almost 17 years to complete that collective bargaining agreement. Not because we didn't want to, but we've gone through successive government to try to complete it, and it was concluded last year. Now, coming out of that, there have been some agreements that we've signed on to, so it is legal, yet they have not been implemented. So that's one aspect.
So what exactly was to be implemented after the agreement?
Example is that, for example, the transfer grant. So, and I want to tell you that that transfer grant was agreed on and signed off by government from the partial agreement. So this is years before we actually signed off on the complete agreement. Which would have meant...
This is to move the amount from 1,200
to 1,500. So it is on a legal document, yet public officers, I know for a fact, are getting transfer letters which indicate that they're getting 1,200 when there is an agreement that has been signed off through our collective.
$300 more.
Right. So, so that is just one of the issues. From the time, even before we signed off on that last collective bargaining agreement, and after, we've been saying to government, all right, so they gave us back. Remember that thereafter, we would have lost our 10% pay cut. And then there was the freezing of the increment. A year or so later, they reinstated the increment. But public officers have been asking, so tell us what will happen? What will happen to the increment that we've lost? So it's not that the leaders are saying to government, this is what we want. It is the members that are saying, what about what we lost, the economic loss that we've had? Everything is going up. and yet our salaries are not going up, but at very least, give us back what we would have lost. So it's not, you know, there is a feeling, the general public and others, that, oh, it's all about money. It's not about money. It's not a raise we're asking for, despite the fact that there have been some persons who have gotten raised. We're asking for an adjustment. Adjust us to where we should have been. And that way, at least that is going to put the public officers and teachers in a little better position. So we've been asking for that 8.5% adjustment. I want to emphasize it's an adjustment. But it's a little bit more, because we would have written to government saying, all right, let us start our renegotiation. Let us start to negotiate for this new collective bargaining agreement. And even before that, we had written to government. Election came into the fray. Of course, we were put on the back bench as it relates to any negotiation, and we understood, but elections done. So that the general feeling was that, okay, fine, you're going to come back to us. Nothing came back to us. We wrote government. We wrote to government.
Since March, you've written again?
Yes, since March. And we got no response, save and except one letter that we got maybe 2 days ago, might have been 2 days ago, and that is because the teachers had already put out what their intentions were. And even when we got that letter, it was just an acknowledgement. And I want to tell you, Nuri, I feel that, in fact, there was not as much thought in it, because I will tell you that even though the other two presidents got that letter, I never received it. It was never copied to me. So I want to say that.
That's a big breach, because you were part of that whole.
So while the letter do address the three presidents, it was not sent to me. So if they would notice, I have not acknowledged receiving that letter, because it wasn't sent to me. Maybe it's an oversight, but that's a huge oversight.
That's a big oversight, indeed.
Right? Because, and I will tell you, 100 people are copied in on that email, except my name is not there. But that's a small issue. The point is, my brother and sister, they shared the email with me, with the content of the email, and it was simply an acknowledgement that we received your letter and that we will set a date. That was it.
I remember the principals on the government side was the Deputy Prime Minister and some other minister.
It was the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Education then, Honorable Francis Fonseca. There was the Minister of State in Finance, Honorable Chris Coy, was there as well. And I must tell you, those meetings, those encounters were very, very fruitful, very respectful. They were.
Why would not that follow up right after the decision? Why would that follow up not take place to live up to the agreement?
And of course, there was the Minister of the Public Service. Let me not forget.
All right, so Mr.
Henry
Usher.
Charles,
So
Henry
for
Charles.
it to have taken that length of time, and then now you're saying, or you're suggesting that since this call on the part of BNTU, you suddenly gotten a letter now saying we acknowledge.
It was just an acknowledgement letter.
Not to say we're coming up and we're going to by such and such a date begin to.
Since then, though, I will tell you, since being on another talk show yesterday, another letter came in that in fact is now indicating a date.
Okay.
Right?
For the continuation.
For a meeting.
But what about what they have already agreed to? Is there anything indicating that we will now proceed in paying off the...
Not as far as I know. Not as far as I know. I know they're doing right now they're doing transfers, and those letters are indicating 1,200 and not 1,500 that was agreed upon. And I have to tell you that a number of these things would have had to go to finance before it would have been, we would have been able to agree on. In fact, as I said to you, the Minister of State in Finance would have sat in those meetings So they would have known what are the financial implications to any of the agreements that we would have signed off on last year. Right? So public officers and teachers are aware of this. So it is, we as leaders, we can't just sit down and say, all right, we're hearing them, we're not doing, they are agitated, they are not happy. And I think what is the straw that broke the camel back is the fact that just after election, literally, no cabinet had been formed, nothing. We're seeing a letter where the cabinet secretary is giving himself and the CEOs a raise. So even if we didn't want to react, members have reacted in relation to that. So they're telling us, we have no money, we can't give you a raise. In fact, we had made a sacrifice with a 10% cut. The Prime Minister is saying, yes, the economy is booming now, we're moving forward, but only certain people are considered when when you're talking about cost of living. And I want to speak more specifically now to the heads of department, because they're the heavy lifters, along with the public officers that work under them. And they're the ones who let these CEOs look good. They're the ones who are running the departments, the ministries. They are the ones. Yet it is the CEO who is getting the raise. No. My opinion is that if you want to get paid comparative to the private sector, then stay in the private sector. Right? I was told that, in fact, I remember at some point in time, I wanted to, when I joined the legal part of the service, I was brought in at $40,000 a year, an annum. That is with my 5 years of studying. 40,000, Nuri. But that is what the public service was paying. When I looked at my colleague, I had two persons, the no DPP and another individual who had come, who graduated the same year with me. And when they came on board, they were placed at 60,000 and I'm getting 40,000. But they signed on under a contract. When I spoke to the public service, Ministry of Public Service, they're saying, well, you have pension, you have gratuity, you have, and they're coming in under a contract. I'm making this point because when the CEOs came in, they negotiated, they came under a contract. They knew what they were coming to. And they agreed to that. So how come all of a sudden it's not enough? I'm also saying, if you want to be paid as the private sector,
stay in the private
then stay in the private sector. We have had to be subjected to reduce in terms of salary and compensation because we have chosen to serve the government and people of Belize. And I'm using myself as an example to highlight this. At the end of the day, with all the experience I would have come in, and I will tell you, at 40,000, I didn't come with no experience. I had already had 10 years in the public service when in fact I was placed there. Right? 10 years. So we're talking about people who are coming in here, who have had no public service experience and being placed at a position where it is. I remember at some point when we were looking at salaries, the cabinet secretary, the now present cabinet secretary, used me as an example. But what he didn't tell the public at the time is the amount of years of service that I had. That it didn't, and that is why it's important for me to tell the public where I started with a law degree and 10 years of experience. Right? But I was used as an example of that public officer that is getting whatever. Right? So why we're here still is that they want their increments. They want, and that we are suggesting can be done by way of that salary adjustment. At very least, we can start there. We are also asking, and just in case the public is wondering, well, it's just about public officers, it's about money. No, we're not just looking after ourselves. We are also asking the government to honor that 6%, $6 increase in the minimum wage, that won't only affect.
That's for all workers.
That's for all workers, right? And if it is they can't do it for everyone, then at least look at the public sector workers.
Did you look at the financials? I mean, your own group. Have you looked at the financials and not need to convince yourself, but you've looked at the financial and you know that you're not asking for anything that is unreasonable?
No.
Particularly in view of the fact that if government is claiming that we can't honor this now because of financial reason, then why would you up the salaries of the cabinet secretary as well as all the CEOs? That's the argument.
Well, Nuri, the Prime Minister himself have said the economy is booming. We're at a good point. He quoted figures in terms of
so there's
how
no justification for...
So we're not saying take it back. You have some people who would want to say take back that increase from the cabinet secretary and the CEOs. We're not saying that. We're simply saying let us get our fair share. That is all we're asking for. So yes, they feel that they deserve their 20% increase. We feel that we deserve that salary adjustment that we're asking for, among other things. So it's not just about salary adjustment, right? And I don't want to leave the public because, like I said, a lot of people think it's just about money. But we've been asking for good governance. We've been asking for the implementation of the civil assets, recovery of civil assets. We've been asking for the whistleblowers. We've asked for things that would, in fact, impact on corruption in our government and our country.
But you recognize that the public would look at this and say, but you know, me recognize all these other important issues.
But we
now
were.
With the salary.
No, but we were.
Okay.
Yes.
But we didn't hear you.
They might not have heard because.
But it's important because it's not until this scandalous revelation that the cabinet secretary is giving himself more money as well as the CEOs that your unions, all three, came forward, despite the fact that you're talking about UNCAC, you're talking about other issues of corruptions, etc., but they were quiet.
We were not quiet, and I want.
Or it's just that we're not publicly hearing it.
And maybe that might have been. I don't want to put any blame in relation
not blame,
to that.
But
I'm just saying. But at the end of the day, what hits a person's pocket
clearly
is what will make them
clearly
react.
And hence the reason people say this is about money.
And that is why I'm here to indicate.
It is fair to say it is about money. Money is real.
But even if you look at our demands, or what we are asking the government to consider, it's only one thing. Well, maybe not one, because the minimum wage might also be seen as money. But it's not just about money for the public sector workers. It's about looking at the cost of living across the board. I keep on saying to people that you don't understand that there are public officers who are one payday away from poverty. One payday away, and we're talking
especially
about
teachers.
Yes, and not just that, even with the little that they make, they still have to find equipment for their classrooms and feed some of the children who come, right? So they're taking from the little that they have and they're supplementing government. I know of situations in which they're asking public officers to pay to go do government work, pay themselves, and then they will be reimbursed. How can you ask public officers
with
to do that when they have meager resources?
But this kind of rhetorical question: if the CABSEC and the CEOs had waited a year for this increment, this increase for them,
we still would have had a problem.
Okay. So this
we
problem,
still would have had a problem if they had not addressed the fundamental issues that we have.
Okay.
Because if you are telling us that we don't have any money, we don't have enough to to give you what you're asking for. From the time I have entered into this, well, actively into the union business, we've been asking for insurance
Yes,
for
I
public
remember that
officers.
I've talked to you before on this show about insurance.
And that is one thing that is near and dear to me.
Yeah.
I bought my own, but you're talking about public officers who are exposed to hazardous materials. We don't know how many of these teachers have gotten cancer from the chart that we've been begging for insurance. You understand?
I could remember talking to you, and my mind is now going back. It has to have been about 10 years ago, Miss Fraser, that you were asking why is the government not entering into an insurance scheme. When
we
if
did
I'm not
all the background.
there were some insurance companies that were willing to get into the conversation.
Yes, yes.
So what I don't want to leave this current issue, but I can't understand why government would not enter into a scheme that would protect its workers not only at the NHI level, but also as an insurance scheme. Since you got thousands of workers all paying their salaries, what is the reason, or why do you think there's a reason why they are not entered into it?
That's not priority. Let me tell you.
Well, how could it not be a priority when it is your workforce?
Let me tell you this, Nuri. The law, as it relates to the firefighters, the firemen, their legislation says that those firefighters should be insured, shall be. There is a legal obligation on government. Their legislation says that. Yet, as I'm speaking to you, so this is not an indictment only on this administration, but previous administration. Yet, no firefighter is insured by government. And that is what their law is saying.
Incredible.
You understand?
So something could drop down on one of them Monday and you're on your own.
Unless they have their own private insurance.
Exactly.
Right?
But I'm saying government's obligation to ensure the safety of especially a hazardous job like firefighting. You're not covered by any...
I'm not even going at any other departments or any other public officers or any... I'm just looking at firefighters. Their law says that. Yet they're not insured. So for me, I am looking at the persons who I represent, which are the HODs, who would have age upon them. Years of working in government, they have high blood pressure, they have diabetes, they have high cholesterol, they have high everything.
Except salary.
Except salary. Yes, thank you. Yes. So that for me, it would cost the government far less to insure these people. You know how much money they're paying out on sick leave?
Yeah.
That in fact they have to pay as far as compensating Social Security. They did a study when Minister Cowie, they did a study in relation to how much they're paying out on persons who take sick leave, who are out on extended sick leave, whatever. An insurance plan would have covered this, Nuri, and lessened that financial burden on government. Yeah. There was a point when it is that we had asked, okay, now give away the last tranche of the insurance. The adjustment when we were going in phases. For me, I said to them, representing my members, take the last 3% and start one insurance, and then we're willing to contribute. All of that we had put in us, so it wouldn't have been that the burden was totally on government. Mm-hmm. I am contributing 100% towards my health insurance. So what would have been for me, even if they had said to me, okay, you pay 50%. Of course, that is not what we were asking for. I think we were at 80-20, right? That is where we had started. And in fact, it was push up. So it's more than just about money and about this 8%, right? And I want to say there are many other things. It's about good governance. It's about a lot of other issues.
Well, I want to bring up some of those other issues. I expect the other guests will be in here, but we'll take this break now for 2 Cents Cam. This is Brick City's presentation, and it is brought to you by Fort Point Security.
I don't want to say big respect to our sponsors, 4-Point Security, all right? People, BNTU is at it again, all right? And a lot of things is in the making. One included is shutdown of school as they take their time with their protests, all right? But make we find out, the parents, their 2 cents, how this affect them when the school, they go up and go slow. 2 cent question, a BNT, you don't forget to check. Don't how that affect you as a parents with your kids?
Well, they have to do what they need to deal with, what they deal with.
The BNTU, again, they look for go up on strike, but I want to find out your 2 cents as a parent, how that affect you with your kid not in school.
Well, in a life they have a thing where they say you have to give and take, right? I have a child. I have two grandbabies at school, and one of them I go to school, go 10 to her every day. So I have a first-hand experience that my teachers go through, right? So, like I said, I gotta do what I gotta do. I mean, yeah, I pick my kid, yes, but if I can make it better down the road for my same kid too, then I deal with it because, I mean, come on, man, you have to be fair, yes. Because the teacher are everything, teacher, parent, doctor, nurse, everything in one. So treat people fairly, man, right?
How you feel about the BNT, to go up on strike and know that your kids want to be out of school, you know, some days, as a parent, what are your 2 cents?
So they need to straighten up, man. Set the focus right with the government, man. Because no matter the kids don't have education.
That's your 2 cents?
Yeah, my 2 cents.
That if the teachers take strike, you want to make sense that the students they follow the teachers then, because everything what the teachers then do at the end of the day that for the students then. And where I realize that not just the school, general school, teacher go all out for the student. Brother, one strike affect all of we. But if we come together and utilize where the teachers then give we, because at the end of the day the teacher they educate all of we. All right. That's your 2 cents. We have to follow the student they need to come and follow the teacher. So the whole country could start to follow the teacher. At the end of the day, educate all of we. Even the Prime Minister get educated from a teacher. All right.
WUB Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes on a Thursday morning, a hot Thursday morning. We don't know what will happen tomorrow in Belmopan, but the three most powerful public service unions are getting together tomorrow for a massive demonstration in Belmopan, and it happens to coincide with the new opening of this administration's House of Assembly. And also I get the sense that they're moving from one area into another area. Whatever it is, the representatives of the PSU is here, Mr. Dean Flowers, and also the president of the BNTU, Ms. Callis, Ms. Nadia Callis. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
I've taken up a lot of time already with Ms. Frazier
Yes.
from the senior public servants. So we'll give much of the time left for both you and Dean. Let's start with you, Nadia, because I'm sure that everybody wants to hear from you as the president.
Certain.
Yeah, you are. So please, what are you demonstrating for tomorrow? And if you could narrow it down to some of the specifics that we were talking about before the camera went on.
What my teachers are standing up for, I'm going to go to point number 1, an 8.5 salary adjustment.
Have you told government that 8.5 is a realizable goal that they can afford to if they want to, despite the increase for the CEOs and the CABSEC? Have you said to them that 8.5 is a realizable goal?
Well, I'm going to say that to them when we meet on Tuesday, because finally they gave us an opportunity to sit at the table and discuss instead of talking to the public or talking to them through mediums of this nature. No?
Okay.
So we'll get the opportunity to do that. Prior to that, we had members assigned to 2 committees, the cost savings and the revenue enhancement, and Sister Fraser is a part of one of those.
Okay.
And we have found where cash is available to get what we're requesting.
It's achievable.
And it can be more than 8.5 based on what we have found.
So you know that nothing to do with the fact that there's been just sudden increase in salaries, despite that.
That is the straw that broke the camel back.
So that is really the car.
That is the straw that broke the camel back.
Car wanted to say that you can't address what you address this
the others,
chosen
yes.
group. This is the reason why you're moving.
Yeah.
All right.
I will tell you, I knew that I needed to be beside her at 7, but I was there actually. I was listening to my chief and my CEO on another media house because it's important that I hear what they have to say, you know.
Did you want to share some of what you heard that might be concerning?
Some of what they have said, I've shared. I'm not a dishonest leader. I've shared that with the public. I've shared that with my teachers, so they do know, right? So there are certain things I will not argue with them. There's a thing that happened to me when I was on Love FM on Monday, and I said to them, there's this half glass, half full, half empty thing,
yes.
And they tend to focus on the section that is full, and then you have the section that is empty. My leadership is focusing on both the full and the empty, what we have achieved and what we need to achieve. And what I see is that they don't really want you to focus on what you need to achieve, but you cannot fill that glass if you don't look at the steps that you need to take to fill that glass. And that's my thing, so I won't argue with that. I won't argue figures with them either when it comes to some of the things that they throw around. When it comes to the BNTU membership, I am at the BNTU office. I know who pays over the counter, who pays through academic school, who pays through the smart stream. They have access to one set of data. I have access to everything. I sit there, so I won't argue percentages pertaining to that. What is important for me though,
you have the full picture
of my union and the state of my union. Yes, that's my job as a leader. I can't be your leader if I don't understand. And I keep telling my people, I first of all understand so that I can be understood. But when it comes to, I need to talk about Teachers' Day and how the BNTU Council and the teachers feel. We know that this year is national, and teachers have been emailing. I emailed the ministry, the CEO to be exact, and up to date, no acknowledged receipt, we'll get back to you later, nothing. Nothing. What they did yesterday, we were sent a flyer via WhatsApp. That's it. Ask us anything else, we don't know anything. Respect is important in this game.
But you know,
please,
Nadia, it's really strange, and I don't want to pull him out here, but it seems as though when Francis Fonseca was your minister, was I reading that wrongly? It just seemed as though it was a more, well, make us start.
Our relationship with Minister Fonseca is an excellent one. I can tell you that. We didn't always agree, that I can tell you. But he understood where we were coming from, and key areas that he knew required urgent attention, he ensured that measures were put in place to correct those things.
So do you think there's been a step back now from...
I haven't met the Minister Rickeny at all, you know. I have listened to him in the news, we have spoken over the phone when we needed to talk about the assistance for the convention. And when I needed access to the same list that they referred to this morning so that I could give my members update.
But hasn't he been proactive enough to step in and say...
He has been everywhere else meeting and discussing, but not with the union.
Have not addressed the teachers, but doesn't he realize the power
he addressed
of the
them differently, but
BNTU?
not through the BN. Listen, I'll tell you something. I learned something very important in life. You don't beg people for things that happen to be their responsibility. So I'm not going to beg him for a meeting. We wrote requesting that already. We're waiting. I'm not going to beg him. There are certain things I will come and ask for, and I'm going to be humble about it. But when you want me to come on my knees and beg you like a puppy,
especially when it has to do with your rights.
That will not happen.
Because of our crunching time this morning, Dean, let me ask you to jump in because you also have been very vocal on the media over the last few days. Bring us up to date on the PSU's concern and why you're demonstrating tomorrow on your own issues, or are you just giving support to BNTU?
Yeah, well, the issues are shared.
Okay.
All right, so we're all public officers, and the issues that we're grappling with in terms of what we're requesting extends beyond APSSM, BNTU, PSU. It also impacts on the police officers. The very police officers that I understand was giving the unions hell yesterday to be able to exercise their constitutional right to demonstrate.
Tell us a little about that, because some may not know and may not have heard the news. What are you making reference to?
Well, we got a permit, but there were some issues that was reported to me as it relates to the logistics and the ability of us to traverse where we have a right to traverse. But I won't get into that conversation because I think that will play out itself tomorrow.
I see. That is important, because if you're saying that the police interfered with what you believe was a legal expression, then tomorrow is even more important because you will be out there in great numbers and you have the police that is responsible. I don't know if the plan is still to have an open air House of Assembly, but you know, we've seen these things become confrontational in the past when they were in the house. What about if they're in the open? So it's very important that you say if the police is having a certain attitude, or you believe that the police was showing a certain attitude yesterday, that doesn't translate into creating...
No, I don't believe so. I believe that consistently the unions have been very responsible when they mobilize en masse. My difficulty whenever I get reports of the police wanting to direct us in a certain location or along a certain route is what always gets to me. Because the police department, especially at this point of time, should be deploying their resources where it's needed, which is the citizen, to the safety and security of citizens.
What about provocateurs, though? I mean, because in these things, people look for opportunities to derail. Well, are you concerned? And that's for all of you.
I mean, look, Nuri, you can't legislate behavior. So if there are those type of elements that are around, then they will be pointed out and dealt with. But I will.
So you're going to police your own.
We've always, and I would hope that the new commissioner deploy the resources where they ought to be, which is to secure the citizens of this country rather than deploying excess force in Dongapan to try to intimidate the workers of this country who are fighting for him and his police force, because nobody fights for them. As a matter of fact, that is an abusive force, I dare say, in terms of how they treat their own. And so, but that's a separate conversation that we can have another day. The issue at hand here is that public sector workers came to the rescue of this economy when they were called upon. And the lack of respect that have been given to us in terms of ensuring that our terms and conditions of service improves as the economy also improves is unacceptable. You would have, Sister Nada would have said she has not met or had the opportunity to meet with her minister. Well, guess what? Do you think the unions have had the courtesy of multiple meetings over the last 5 years with the Prime Minister?
No.
He made one single invitation in 5 years. And I believe it was a December 12th meeting, 2022, thereabout, and attempted to disrespect the unions. And of course, he knows how that went. So, and I've been saying it, this administration that was born out of the labor movement has no regards for the labor movement.
Wow.
Absolutely none. And I have been saying, and I will repeat it, this administration led by John Briceño is anti-workers.
Wow.
Anti-workers.
That's a very strong statement.
No, and I stand by that statement because his actions demonstrate that. This is a neoliberal government that gives the private sector tax breaks at every single opportunity. At every single opportunity, they give the private sector millions upon millions of dollars of tax breaks and absolutely nothing for workers. They've done absolutely nothing for workers other than squeeze workers. They came in informing us that we had to make sacrifices, which we willingly did. They did not. They didn't make any sacrifice while they were in opposition, and they've made absolutely no sacrifice in government. On the contrary, we've seen 3 adjustments for CEOs since they signed the original contracts. And nothing for the public sector workers, nothing for the pensioners that we're also calling for us adjustment for. We're saying pensioners are, some of them are living on less than $500 and $600 and $700.
Let me take this call because I want to make sure at least you get a call in. Welcome, caller. Do you have a question for the panel?
Hello, Mr. Nuri. This is the answer the nephew that was murdered Tuesday, Kadima Roscoe.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you will need know that this market already is plastic, but
yeah.
It really hurts to me to say our family to go through this latest incident and violence, but sir, I just want the nation to know, right, and I want the National Security Minister, Mr. Karim Musa, to know that, quote unquote, that my nephew wasn't a gang member. He wasn't a gang member, he was a father figure to his child.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, my nephew always passed through that area, go and to overtake his daughter, Kyrie Archaeological to the Magna School.
Yeah.
Now, for preschool days, my niece Kyrie went there for the preschool and up to the standards are waiting and right now, sir.
Yeah.
The people have no reason to kill my nephew, come and they don't know nobody that back there.
All right.
Now, tell me that nobody can pass through an area innocently minding their own business. You know? That really hurts for us, sir.
Yes, sir.
That really hurts us because Kadim wasn't a person like that. Kadim has no party.
No, he doesn't.
You know, and Kareem mother passed away 7 years ago from a heart attack. And when Kareem mother passed away, Kareem took it to heart and started drinking. You know how them things they go, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Miss Roscoe, make we talk a little bit later, 'cause I'm right in the middle of this conversation with these three guests. But yeah.
I will talk to you before the ending of the show. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Roscoe. Yeah, I'm sorry to get that off. You know, that's an issue that took place yesterday. We're kind of dealing with that now.
Of course, that's
But
to the citizen security that Brother Lee
yes,
spoke,
indeed.
Because
Indeed.
right now we're talking about the fact that we have locked down about 60 persons.
60 are down.
And in fact, there might very well be innocent persons in all of that.
Yeah.
And how do you... I'm amazed that nobody has taken that on as it relates to, because in some cases the police are abusing their powers. Yeah. And that is something that the commissioner should be concentrating on.
Yes.
As it relates to citizen security. But you can't take away people's rights either.
Yeah.
So
It's all tied in,
yes.
You know, and the rights of the average citizen is tantamount. And when representative organizations of the citizens, I mean, that's what the PSU is, that's what the BNTU is, and that's what the senior public servants are. They are people representative and the concerns that people have. So the government have to listen to what you're saying. Because we're running out of time, I'll try to get some closing comments and try to see if we could tie everything together here. We'll start with you, Ms. Callis, because your union is clearly the largest. And you know, you made the first move out. And then I'm not saying that you all were not involved, but you made the first move out. So please tell us about tomorrow, what your plan is, and if you want to say anything that we haven't talked about before.
Tomorrow is a joint demonstration between the APSSM, the PSU, and the BNTU. We collectively signed the bond. I still need to brief both Sister Fraser and Brother Dean on what transpired before the police, but I guess Sister Trisha shared some of it with you. I haven't even shared the details with my council because I wanted to talk to them as leaders first before talking to my council. As like I said, we're moving together as one. But I just want to share with the teachers of this country that the work that we do is an invaluable one. I appreciate that very much. As a teacher, I appreciate what my colleagues are doing. As a parent, as a citizen of this country, yes. I want to talk about the Teachers' Day situation because it's important that I address that.
Yeah, please do.
We keep getting questions and text, email via different mediums. And I took it upon myself as the leader to write the ministry, the CEO to be exact. Never got a response. And the same questions keep on coming and coming and coming and coming and coming. So as a union, we took the stance to tell our branches, our branch leaders after a meeting, you know what? Take care of our teachers on Teacher Appreciation Day will be Thursday. And the Friday belongs to the ministry. We haven't heard anything, nothing officially, no response to our email, anything. Yesterday when we got that flyer via WhatsApp, that was when we knew that the location and we knew some of the things. But of course, it's at the national level. The team, I heard it this morning on Open Your Eyes. I'm sharing all of these things because when you're partners, you work together on certain things. And even though we disagree where the salary adjustment is concerned, we are still partners in other areas. And that's why when I did my live, I emphasized on the point, and I use simple language because I want to be understood. We sit at different tables and we discuss different things at different tables. And I don't want them to think that, well, this is the practice in Belize. We lump everything together and then we cut off the good. I am not going to facilitate that kind of behavior from anybody, no politician, no CEO, no chief. We're going to get on that table because nobody's going to remove the BNT from that table. And I have seen over the past, when things like this happen, the BNT is placed in a corner and teachers are clamoring for change and we don't get that. You don't blow your own horn, you don't touch your own horn. But as a leader, I am very proud this morning Because the things that they are sharing, that they have achieved and accomplished in the Ministry of Education, majority of those they started to do since I became the president of the BNTU, because I started holding them accountable, and Minister Fonseca identified with that, and measures were put in place. So this morning, I'm a happy leader. I am very happy. And if I die today, I die very happy because I achieved certain things. Yes. So because of that. Before that, what were they doing? That's before my tenure. What were they doing? That's the big question for today. Now coming back to Teachers' Day, I'm saying this publicly. If the BNTU does not get an official invitation, this national president will not appear at that event. I'm not going to allow them to disrespect us, because we have not disrespected them. And I will not disrespect them. I respect their office, but there are times when we will disagree.
Is this bad mind? Is this bad mind, or is this
I am not going to
bureaucracy?
say that it's bad mind or anything. I'm just going to say that even though it is national, the tradition is that we still meet to discuss certain things, and then we are part of the mechanism that get things out. What I see them doing right now is that they're trying to isolate us and rush to the managements for everything. The old practice that had teachers suffering. I'm going to emphasize on that. I'm going to emphasize on that. And they might not agree with that statement, but they are not going to silence us. They're not going to put us in any corner and say time out. That's not going to work. I want to make that clear. So I'm reading all the plays, all the strategies. I am a different kind of leader.
So your issue goes even beyond 5.5%.
Yes, because I want them to know there are other matters that we need to address.
So tomorrow may not be the end of your protest.
Hell no.
All right, good.
No. We have other things that we will have to address if we... I'm one of those leaders. I like the peaceful means, because you don't really have to disrupt the classes with the children and all of that, and we try to get it done.
You've also laid it out, though, in a 3-phase. So tomorrow is phase 1.
Yeah, we're executing.
And then what will happen in phase 2 and phase 3?
That depends on how the negotiation goes on Tuesday.
I see.
Then that will tell us as Junt if we need to go to the major parts of phase 2, or we do the because in every phase you have some minor little things, and then you have something major.
Right.
So then we will decide from there.
Dean, you are part of that process there. How do you see phase 2 and phase 3? Is it imminent, or do you see the possibilities that a negotiation can ameliorate this issue?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the government side comes with on Tuesday. We've written to them. We're hoping that the Deputy Prime Minister will come with his team with responses to the requests, and in some cases demands.
Who are part of their team, by the way?
Their team is comprised of the Honorable Cordell Hyde as the leader, the Honorable Francis Fonseca, the Honorable Henry Charles Usher, the Honorable Chris Koye.
So it's pretty much the same team that was with the...
They recently added Honorable Rickena. No, Lester is not.
No, he's not there.
No, he has nothing to offer other than.
I read wrong. I stand to be corrected.
Who are the other two you said?
They added Honorable Oscar Rickena to the team.
Right. Who is the new minister?
Who is now the new minister?
Right. And the other person?
No, she was saying that the cabinet secretary. But I'm pretty quite sure he would have nothing to offer to the conversation.
I see.
So he's not part of the team.
Okay, but he's not normally involved in those kind of things.
It's only the Honorable Oscar Rickena.
So a lot of this hinges on what happens on Tuesday, but it will be what is displayed tomorrow that will send a signal as to how serious these three unions are to get their members out to demonstrate tomorrow very publicly in front of the National Assembly.
Yes, and hence the reason we're saying, though public officers, they have a right to take a day off, and they should not allow any head of department or any CEO to say to them that they cannot exercise.
They should not accept no threats.
They should not accept any threats.
And what about your teachers? Because
we have
and others have already sent signals to the management and principals.
Actually, they're within their constitutional right.
Yes, you said that, but so would that intimidate and frighten teachers from coming out?
I said to my membership, it's up to them. If they fall for the hidden intimidation, because that's what I call it.
What about the logistics of getting teachers from all over the country to show up in Belmopan? Or
Well,
are you only expecting from certain constituencies?
This is what I will say. From each of my branches, you have a minimum of 2 buses. That I can tell you. From the larger areas, it's more than that.
All right. And BNTU takes care of that.
Yes, because they pay into a strike fund for industrial action.
So that is all strategically arranged. Each area gets 4 buses.
Not 4. There's a reason why I'm sticking to my minimum of 2.
2 buses.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
I'm sticking to that.
And then if they can afford more buses, then
There are areas with far more than 4 buses. That's what I'm going to say.
all right.
There's some of my areas with far more than
You're
that.
very strategic.
Yes.
Good negotiators.
Yeah.
All right, we get it to the end now, so really I have to really close it out.
So
give you a last word, Dean.
Yes. So as I was stating, public officers have a right to take a day off to join the demonstration tomorrow. We're also requesting parents to show concern for the future and the education of their children. If parents support the rally, it means they are defending the right of their children to an education, because that sends a clear signal that they're prepared to stand for the teachers so that teachers can get back in the classroom to continue the education of their children. They can stand on the sideline and watch the continuation of the deterioration of their children's education, and so that will be on them to not support tomorrow's rally. Public officers have a duty, and public officers need to understand they live and work in the system. They know the wastages that is occurring in the system. They know the corruption that is happening in the system, and so we will not accept any suggestion by government, as was done this morning by the Chief Education Officer, the CEO in the Ministry of Education, that the pie not big enough for all away. How the hell can the pie not be big enough for all of us when you are yet to commission under your tenure a comprehensive audit of what is the largest allocation in the budget? Education. To identify where the leakages are. Let's not shy away from the fact that this government is on record to state that when they took on the 30% salaries and pension for teachers, they took on $100 million. That is what they say. That's their numbers. I don't know who audited their numbers, because sure as hell the last Auditor General didn't. And I'm hoping that, and we can only hope and pray that the new one will. They took on $100 million. $100 million that was the responsibility of the grant-aided schools and colleges. My child attends a grant-aided institution, and not a single reduction to her tuition or her fees. So we have gifted these institutions $100 million of taxpayers' money. So don't say to me that you can't find, in her words again, $13 million for public officers. We continue to give unfair tax concessions to these foreigners who continue to exploit our natural resources and our prime resources without paying their fair share in taxes. They don't even have to prove themselves, and we give them 25 years tax exemption. They lie to us about the amount of employment that they'll create. They lie to us about the amount of tax that they'll contribute to the economy. They lie to us about the amount of money that will be reinvested. And we just grant them 25 years exemption. And this administration continues with the same bad economic model that keeps us living as slaves on poverty wages. And we're saying, no, man, you have to change. You have to change, and you have to do better, because my people, the dollar, for each dollar that they earn, I don't even know if it's worth 50 cents at this point in time, Nuri. And so we have a right to speak up, not only for public sector workers, but for the entire Belizean society, who continue to suffer because of the bad governments that we've elected since 1964.
Wow, you're going way back.
Right? So I will end by saying we'll be out there tomorrow. We look forward to a respectful dialogue by the government. They asked for the job. They committed for all of us to win. They said all of us will win. They say they can grow the economy and improve our lives. Despite that, as unions, we have teamed up with them. We continue to assist them in identifying wastages, which the financial secretary that has been there longer than he should be has not taken the necessary steps to effect some of those cost savings measures that will yield immediate savings. They continue to engage in these bloated rental contracts rather than building office complexes across this country to save government millions of dollars. They continue to not carry out audits in a timely manner to identify where corruption exists. We continue to leave about $500 million on the table where land taxes is concerned. We're unable to come to the Belizean people and explain how $14 million invested in the Belize Tax Services Department has improved tax collections. So don't come to me and say there is no money. Get it right. Get it right. You asked for the job. Get it right. Effect and empower and hire competent people in the civil assets recovery and unexplained department of the FIU so that we can recover what past ministers have stolen from us and what current ministers are stealing from us. What public officers have stolen from us and what current public officers might be very well stealing from us, because we know the corruption exists across. What the private sector has stolen from us. They must be able to explain their wealth. And no empowerment of those departments that can easily identify the money that we need to ensure that the living standard increases for public sector workers who are one of the biggest contributors to the economic activities in this country, because what we do impacts immediately on the private sector and the small businesses. So that is my thing, my plea. Public officers, you need to show up in numbers. If you cannot show up tomorrow, we ask you to wear something yellow. And if you're not able to show up also, you also have the right to take a day in solidarity of what will occur tomorrow in Bamapan. And for those who come out, we ask you to be peaceful and respectful, and we ask the police department to be cooperative, because the only organization that speaks up for you is not the police association or any commissioner. None has ever done. It is the Public Service Union, the BNTU, the APSSM, and the other affiliates of the NTUCB that fight for better labor for improvement in the terms and conditions and labor practices in this country.
Well,
so
you've laid out quite a bit. It sounded as if it started with 8% and it started with just looking at correcting the major issues that were affecting you. But as I listened to you, you got a long list of things that you agitate.
That's only half, my brother.
Yeah,
that's only half. So I don't even know if it's at half.
Do you expect that the Prime Minister, as has been done in the past, will leave the Assembly and come out and have a personal audience with you, as former Prime Ministers have done?
No, I don't think that will help anything, because he did that with the pensioners who wants him to resolve the public sector workers' trust issue.
So that kind of...
So what will his appearance to us do for us tomorrow? Okay, so we need actions. And I want to say this to the firemen, because yesterday I had the liberty to meet with some firemen, and yesterday I also had the liberty to listen to the Minister of Public Service saying, and I have to call out these things because they're wrong, and it's taking advantage of people's good faith. The firemen have a legitimate request, and I am calling my firemen to be out there tomorrow, because you're being taken for fools when they're telling you that the requests for your allowances that are due to you needs to go to the Joint Staff Relations Council. The Joint Staff Relations Council has only met once, when I had to come on the media to name and shame the fact that the CEO had never called a meeting in almost 2 years. We have only met once in 2 years, and we have not met since the beginning of the year, I believe. So how the hell we will now consider the firemen their allowance? When the minister wanted to approve $1,500 in allowances alone for a handful of pilots, he took that to cabinet and said, sign this, man, because I need this special group to get $1,500 in allowances. The firemen then asked for $200 here and there, my brother, take the thing to cabinet and give the firemen the allowances what they deserve. So firemen, they get taken for food, because I am yet to be notified of any joint staff relations council meeting, and none has been held, or one has been held in the last 2 years. So I don't know when it is that will be considered, including the domestics who continue to be pricked and have to detect ES tests almost every month or every 3 months because they don't have the protective equipment, who are simply asking for a hazardous allowance as well.
Wow.
So the issues are many, and the people can stay home tomorrow and criticize the messenger rather than inform and educate themselves and speak to the issues. And so all those who are not supportive, who form part of society, I always tell people, you can't move your vehicle if the negative pole not connected. So we also need them. But I want them to think about what they're saying and the fools they're making themselves look at when they're posting foolishness on Facebook against the Public Service Union, against this messenger, and against these sisters, instead of think through and understand you have picnic. And what we're doing here is in the best interest of your children, not in the best interest of us. Thank you.
All right, my brother. You put a lot on this table. I thought we were talking about 8.5%, but we're talking about a lot.
These things are connected to that, no?
It is all connected, clearly, and government needs to sit up and take note. This should not be taken for granted, not after simply because you won the last election, that all things are fine and dandy. There is this effort to say that you collectively are still just a small percent of the Belizean population, and look at our overwhelming win at the last election. We don't have to worry about UNU because the majority are with us. But that could be foolhardy.
Yep.
Because if you don't pay attention to the squeaky wheel, eventually it will break down the whole machine. So thank you very much for your presence here.
Could I just, as a last note, I want to reach out to my members, to the HODs, to please, we have lent our support to this process. I ask that you in no way frustrate or attempt to frustrate the public officers who work under you. Allow them the time they need. Remember, they have constitutional rights. And we ask that you also support in every single way that you can. So I am appealing to my members. Some have already lent their commitment to this process, and I ask the remainder to please do. And come out as well. It can't be that we have our issues as well, and they know what their issues are. They're working close to the CEOs and others and ministers, so that it is not about overthrowing any government. It is about peacefully indicating to this government what we are not happy about and what we need to see changes in. So that is my appeal for persons to come out and lend your support.
All right. That's kind of like a little passive aggressiveness there, but and get me
after
after that.
I just want to say
you calm it down a little bit there just now, miss. But listen, we give you a last word, and this has to be the last word.
This movement is the slogan for this movement is, we matter, what affects us affect you. And when Brother Dean talked about the $13 million, I smiled because on one media house I hear 40 million, then I hear the Minister of Public Service saying they need to go and do the figures. So everybody's saying all kind of things. Maybe the 13 million is only for the kids, I don't know. Maybe. We just keep hearing figures, right? Yeah. But this is what I want to say. I loved when CEO Mejia said, she didn't go and ask her boss for a raise. He saw her excellent performance and he offered her that raise. Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's good.
I love that. I love that. I really love that. Like I said, I had to listen. I knew I should have been beside her, but I needed to listen. Well, we're saying the same thing.
Yes, look at you and that, see how you're doing. It's time to ask you for
it's time for us. It's time for public officers and teachers to be addressed.
Yeah. Well, we've seen in the country what happened in the past. We've seen when the unions get riled up and it can bring a government down, and just as Said Musa that. And we need to be very, very careful to read these, as they say, when you see smoke over there, it could be a fire. So to pay attention, and it sounds reasonable. There are figures to be concerned about, but we anyway, I'm also being told that I'm going beyond my time. So I want to thank Dean Flowers, I want to thank Ms. Cullis, and I want to thank Ms. Frazier for being here. And clearly, we'll all be paying attention to what goes on tomorrow and see. We do hope it's a peaceful situation, but as I said, we've seen in the past way provocateurs, and sometimes it's not more than one or two persons who may not, they might just be in a yellow shirt or a green shirt, and you don't even know that who. So let's hope that it does not get out of hand. We'll take our next break, and we do have another guest coming in.
Prepare for the heat
back. This is WUB, Wake Up Billy's Morning Vibes. Powerful conversation there with the union representatives. And so tomorrow should be a very important day to watch. The National Assembly will be meeting for the first time in this new administration. And of course, the unions will be out there in large numbers, the 3 different unions that were represented today. So tomorrow will be a very pivotal day, and clearly all of us have to look at what the outcomes of that demonstration and to hear what the Prime Minister has to say on his second round as Prime Minister. It's 8:31 and now we go on to our second guest. He again is no stranger here. He's Brother Jerry Enriquez, who has been very active. As you know, he's been on this show several times over the years to talk about mindfulness. And suddenly, he's no longer in the area of self-cure. He's now in the area of trying to cure the nation and correct an anomaly that has existed in our governance process for some time, and that is this issue of redivisioning, or some call it redistricting. He has brought up a case quite recently in the Supreme Court calling the government's attention to the fact that it would be entering into an election unconstitutionally, and let's start there. Welcome, Brother Jerry.
Thank you for having me, Brother Nuri, and I just want to say also how I really was tuned into the discussion you had with the union, the teachers union, the public service union leaders, and it just goes to show that there's on so many fronts all over our country.
Indeed.
There's a problem, a deep-seated problem in our governance system, and we have not, post-independence, found ways to uproot these deeply entrenched system of corruption and accountability, transparency, and government always putting the population on a kind of a defensive mode rather than serving the people. And so I strongly support the unions for the fight for justice, but also for fair recognition of the tremendous work that they're doing, and they're often ignored, undermined by the same system that we have, as blatant as having the kind of the elite part of the system want to reward themselves with a salary increase and in a heartless manner, not recognizing that there's so many others who are doing so much work and that they're not being as supported. So I'd like to just lend my offer and also extend my support for these struggles. Another thing that is bothersome that we're seeing is the state of emergency. Another band-aid solution over and over and over is almost like insanity on the part of government for not finding new ways to address the systematic and systemic problems that we're facing, that is marginalizing young black men who are like an endangered species, and there are no new innovative, empowering system to try to get them out of this repeated cycle. Instead, the solution is always, I'm not condoning their violence or any way, but there have not been deep level ways, whether through sports or music or different ways, building skills in a kind of an emergency situation where funding or and commitment is made for healing inner city youths and families to be able to, it's a mental health crisis. It is not a police problem, even though we're depending every time for the police to just lock them up, beat them up. And my heart bleeds when I see that every time. And our politicians, those who rewarded themselves with extra salaries, almost not seeing how or finding ways to resolve those problems. So I just want to say all of this is an indication of a system that needs to be looked at deeply and transformed. And so what I'm taking on is just one part of it, and also an important part. We have a government who came into power, abusing the weakness of people's awareness that they could violate the Constitution, outmaneuver a process where they were to be held accountable, and then get into another term of office, and yet just to secure their own lust and greed for power without finding ways to deeply transform. All of these things are situations that we have to look at a deep level of our conscience across the nation.
You
so
said,
I just wanted to say that
go ahead.
before we get into our other discussion.
Yeah, you said recently, and all of those things that you said just now is very relevant to the bigger picture, that we can't look at ourselves in silos or little issues that are not interconnected. They are all interconnected, and that's very, very important. But you made a point in a recent article looking at the court case that you took forward, which was thrown out, so to speak, for procedural issues and not for the substance of the case itself. The substance of the case is that this is what the Constitution says, and that is what you were expecting that the judge would have addressed. But instead, he addressed procedural matters. In other words, you never cross your T and dot your I, and et cetera, and hence your case was thrown out. But you made this very profound statement that the Governor General, the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, the Speaker of the House, as well as the Elections and Boundaries, all violated the Constitution by going ahead with this past election. Can you comment on that?
Well, before the elections were called, we wrote a pre-action protocol letter to all of these persons in their office, in their different offices that you mentioned, to remind them that if elections were called, it is in violation of the Constitution, and the government knows this. They promised to correct the severe imbalances or malapportionment in Belize's electoral divisions. And they knew a matter was also unresolved through the Belize Peace Movement, calling for, through a consent order, to fix the problem before elections are called. Now, we're still in the month of May. Elections were supposed to be called in November, even though they could call it in the time before then. But we had time enough to do proper redivisioning before elections. What we have right now, post-election, is the maintenance of a status quo, where you have one area representative, for example, representing Stand Creek District with over 10,500 registered voters. And you have another area like Fort George in Belize City with about 3,000 registered voters. So you have this vast difference. And we went into election maintaining that status quo. How can that be right? And how can the population continue to maintain silence? And so that has not yet been resolved. And so they entered knowing that it is a violation of the Constitution.
But Jerry,
Governor General herself and all the other, and nothing has been done.
They all know this, and both governments, meaning the PUDP as they call, know this and have not done it. Could it be, and this is just rhetorical, that they are looking at this as important but not urgent? Your case, as well as the BPM's case, is that, look, this is urgent because we've been violating what the Constitution says for over a decade, going on 2 decades, in fact. So this is an urgent situation from your perspective, but governments, both governments are saying we can't do it, because it is important, but it's not urgent. How do you respond to that?
Well, that is why we have the Constitution. That is the supreme law. Every government, when they get into office, swear to abide by the Constitution. It is not to say there's no, in fact, there's not a choice for government to say, I will not abide by this part, I will not abide by this part, I will choose when to abide by it. That is the supreme law. And to the extent that they're not complying with the supreme law, they are violating the Constitution. They're breaking the law. And so that is the essence of the case. We have to challenge them. These unregistered, unaccountable organizations that we call political parties are utilizing the system, hijacking, in a sense, the whole process, finding loopholes to try to get away from abiding by the Constitution. And I could say, there are no fools to listen. I could hear the different kinds of conflicts of interest that they're trying to maintain. But I strongly advise that for people to wake up and see that part of the root of the problem is that these guys continue to break the law and secure terms in office unconstitutionally.
You've also made a profound accusation, you as well as your attorney from Trinidad, that the sitting justice, Mr. Hondura, made statements while his mic was on that suggested that he would have ruled in a certain way in regards to this case even before the case was completed, and you're accusing him of judicial misconduct, for a judge is not supposed to certainly be heard saying his opinion on a case before the case is actually completed and he has given his official judgment. But could that also fall into that category, that the position you have taken and your group have taken, as well as the Belize Peace Movement, is viewed by the powers that be as, yes, it's an important matter, but this thing has to do with power. And so therefore we're not going to shift and go in the direction of Mr. Your case, as well as the case of BPM. We're not moving in that direction, and his uttering whatever he uttered, because we don't know specifically, I don't know specifically what he has uttered, but whatever he uttered clearly gave your colleagues, gave your group the impression that he has violated his position in the integrity of the court. Can you address that?
Yes, unfortunately, during the case, before we had completed our arguments, there were attorneys in Trinidad who were also listening to the case. And during the lunch break, the microphone of the judge, was unmuted, and they overheard what he was discussing in the case, which showed clear bias, clear prejudice, and it just showed that he was prejudging the case, uttering words according to the affidavit that he was going to throw out the case and teach us a lesson. That is already stated in the affidavit. We submitted that to the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. But beyond that, when they heard those first words, they rushed to record the other conversation. And
you have that in evidence. You have that in evidence now. The actual
as part of the affidavit, yes, to the Judicial and Legal
and
Services.
have you gotten anything back from this body after they heard that recording?
We have not yet heard, beyond their acknowledgement of receipt of our submission. They have not responded as to what the next step will be, when the investigation is going to start, that itself is a delaying process, delayed
All right.
process. We are asking the Judicial and Legal Services Commission to treat it as urgent and to remove the judge from anything else that has to do with our case. Because he already showed prejudice.
So you're asking that he be removed from the case itself. That's the request.
Yes. And that is urgent for the Judicial and Legal Services Commission to do. And we have submitted also a written submission to the High Court, a complaint of judicial bias, an application of it to the High Court. So we're serious about this. This is not something that will go away like a leaf breeze as some politicians treat our country.
But I've also heard you say that if you don't get satisfaction at this level, that your group is willing to take this all the way to the CCJ. Is that correct?
And we are serious about that, yes, because as we found out, probably like a matter of I could say like God sent, it revealed something to us behind the scenes for judges to be discussing and prejudging a case. It's judicial misconduct, it's corruption. And I want to read a few points from the Judicial Code of Conduct. For example, in the Bangalore Principle of Judicial Conduct, which is internationally recognized, it says, public confidence in the judicial system and in the moral authority and integrity of the judiciary is of utmost importance in a modern democratic society. It is essential that judges individually and collectively respect and honor judicial office as a public trust and strive to enhance and maintain confidence in the judicial system. Who do the people turn to when their own government persistently violate the Constitution? And if we're not finding the confidence in our judicial system, then we're in deep trouble. And that all of those things need to be transformed. So when we look at the teachers fighting, the unions fighting, all that, it is because those who are responsible.
I gotta slow you down though, Jerry, because you're on a roll, and that's good, and I need to take another break. But when we come back, I want to look at this idea of what do you do in a case like this in the event that locally Dr. Honduras is not sanctioned or cautioned, or there's nothing that comes from us in this regard. What are you expecting from the CCJ, and how will that impact your case itself? When we come back, we'll answer those questions.
Ya balisi serutin
right, our guest is Mr. Jerry Enriquez, and as you know, he took a case before the Supreme Court to call the government to check that going ahead with this election in March was unconstitutional based on the similar principle as what was laid out by the Belize Peace Movement, and that is that our Constitution says that we must have close to equal numbers of citizens in each division. And it has been unlike that for over 20 years. In some areas we have 10,000 and in some areas we only have 3,000. And there's been this need to readjust. And each government has been saying they will do it, but up to this last government, even though it promised that it would do it, did not do it. And so Mr. Enriquez and a group took the government to court. They lost the case, but there was something that took place during that one where the sitting judge made certain comments thinking that his mic was off, and this was called up by their attorney, and now Mr. Enriquez is taking it even further to say that this must be addressed, and so we have him as our guest this morning. Jerry, time is running tight, but could you deal with the most salient aspect of your case that you're presenting?
So I just want to remind that we do not want that judge involved in our case. The evidence is overwhelming that there was misconduct. We're hoping that the Judicial and Legal Services Commission treat this urgently because it is an urgent matter, and we do not want him sitting in the case. I just want to do two more things because people seem to be trying to broad brush this and say, well, I just could discuss the case with anybody at any time. No, there is a judicial code of conduct and ethics. I'll just read two. A judge shall exercise judicial function independently on the basis of the judge's assessment of the facts and in accordance with a conscientious understanding of the law and free from extraneous influences, etc. So that judge had no right during the case before our submissions were complete to be discussing the case with any other judge. So even the recordings show that he was involved in discussing our case and could be unduly influenced in that discussion, because instead of looking at the merits of our case, the chronological order in which the government was forewarned that going into election would have been unconstitutional, and our submission of our application for injunction just before elections were called, all of those kinds of evidence was kind of swept under the rug. Because of that, and that conversation during the lunch break showed it.
So, so Jerry, you're really saying that had his mic been off and he were making these statements privately, then in fact you would not have had an additional case to carry on. In other words,
would not have known.
Yeah, you would not have known that he had made these statements because the mic was off. In other words, maybe judges talk like this with each other all the time, but they don't know that their mic, they ensure that their mic is off when they're making these candid statements. But in your case, the reason why you have some additional fuel in your case is because of this open mic. Is that right?
Whether the mic was on or off, no judge should be discussing a case
in principle
with another judge. It is breaching a judicial code of conduct. I mean, in performing judicial duties, a judge shall, within the judge's own court, be independent of judicial colleagues in respect of decisions which the judge is obliged to make independently. It just so happened then that he was caught doing that, and we have that
so
evidence.
should he have recused
whether the mic was on or off,
Should he have reclused himself, having been exposed? Should he have just reclused himself and say...
He ought to have, by now, recused himself, but he hasn't. And so we need to further investigate this and to see where this goes. But as I said, that already breaches our confidence in his independence, in his being the integrity of the system, and so we cannot continue like somebody.
And you have a hard copy of the tape itself that have been presented in your case, right?
We file on flash drives recordings of that conversation during the lunch break. Okay. And we also have a company, an expert professional company, transcribe what was in those audio into transcript.
Okay, so this has been presented to the judicial services commission here in Belize.
Yes. So, and to the Chief Justice.
And to the Chief Justice in this case. Yes. And you have not received any reply from either of those?
We have received just acknowledgement of receipt. Just acknowledgement. So we're waiting for what the decision to be made. And hopefully justice, fair play, integrity will prevail. And as I said, we cannot in any way continue to just let these things fly like a leaf breeze. This is our democracy that is downward spiraling by politicians. And we cannot have our judicial system also seen as losing its integrity and its independence.
So, in your final words, Jerry, what is the best case scenario in your case?
Well, it is good for the public to be aware, and one thing that has happened, and I'm really grateful for all those people who have given support and encouragement to this process. We're showing that there's a strong desire for transformation of our country, our democracy, for life to be better here, and for those who take office to have a measure of integrity, service, care for the population, and to get rid of all these kinds of greed and popularity by our contest by these politicians and the lack of accountability and accountability and all of this. We need to find ways to improve life for all in Belize. We elect our leaders to serve us, and that is what we expect. In compliance also with the Constitution that they swear to abide by, and we will hold them accountable.
Yeah. Well, we thank you again, Brother Jerry, for standing up for justice. That certainly, requires our acknowledgement. And you have been consistently doing other aspects of our development, such as our health and our mental and emotional well-being, and we hope that you will continue doing that kind of work. We thank you. I must apologize for cutting some of your time short today. These three were like a powerhouse in the studio, and it required us getting as much as we can from them. But I think we understand the gist of your concern and what you're presenting now after the fact, and hope that we will hear from you for an update on the response from the Chief Justice as well as from the Judicial Commission. Thank you very much again, my brother.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for having me.
Appreciate it. We'll take our fast break and then we'll come back and close.
You may not get to see me very often,
All right, welcome back. This is WUB, Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes. We've come to the end of the extremely energetic program this morning. We thank Mr. Jerry Enriquez. We thank Mr. We had Donald Flowers. We had Miss Callis, as well as we had Miss Frazier. And we thank them all for being present with us this morning. We also have 2 guests lined up for you tomorrow, and so we hope that you will join us for that program. We want to apologize to our colleagues at the Morning Stew for taking this extra 10 minutes of our show this morning to accommodate our guests. And we thank you for being with us as you are every weekday morning here on WUB. So Belizeans, stand strong and stand firm and do the right thing. For now, we gone.
Wake up, Belize. 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 Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. WB. Be yourself, see yourself. This is a show by people. Belize our hopes up to needless reason. Nobody feel left out. It's the vibe we dealing. Let's find a solution. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love